Okay. Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, May 7th, and this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Public Safety and Transportation Committee. At the start of the meeting, I am joined by Councillor Greenberg from Ward 1, Councillor Lucas from Ward 2, Councillor Wright from Ward 3, Councillor Block from Ward 4, Councillor Downs, Vice Chair of the Committee from Ward 5, Councillor Bixby from Ward 6, myself from Ward 7, and I don't see Councillor Lipoff. We're also joined by Captain Devine of the Newton Police Department and David Kozis in our Public Works Department, who actually, David, do you want to tell it, what is your official title?
Yes. Good evening. My official title is Transportation Coordinator in the Transportation Division of DPW.
Excellent, thank you. So we have 3 items on the agenda tonight. I do not expect this to be a very long meeting. Councillor Downs and I wanted to essentially check in with you all on these 3 items. So let me just sort of formally put them. Well, let me just give an overview first, and then I'll put the first 2 before us. So essentially, these 3 items are the pending items on our docket that have the most sort of, weight and possibility of our committee being able to really dive into them and take some action if we so choose. Other than this, we have some smaller, pretty quick transactional kinds of items that are coming up. We have some, renewals and things that we're going to need to do in June. We're going to have a free cash item or 2 in June, but we really don't have any other, sort of meaty topics. And I wanted to both give all of us an opportunity to hear on the first 2 items, because those are the ones we've discussed most recently about fees and fines, what Councillor Downs has been doing behind the scenes and where that's at. And then on the last one about parking, I really wanted to check in and sort of take everybody's temperature about how you want to proceed from here, given that it's May and we have a little bit more than 6 months left in this term. So let me start with the first 2 items, 365-24, which is a discussion and possible ordinance change on residential parking programs and fee structures. And then item 364-24, a discussion and possible ordinance change on the categories and levels of parking fines. And Mr. Kozis, we specifically wanted to invite you tonight because we've had this conversation with Captain Devine and with the members of the committee. Councillor Downs and I have regular check-ins with the mayor and Mr. Yo, and we discussed this topic, and they expressed an interest in sort of reviewing the fees and fines somewhat internally to kind of come up with their own recommendations of where they thought things should be. I think my personal feeling was that given everything that they have on their plate in these upcoming months, I didn't want to essentially let May and June go by, not check in, not kind of, move the ball forward from the committee standpoint, because I thought we had a lot of consensus around these items. Because, before you know it, then it's the summer where we're barely meeting, and all of a sudden it's September. And I just thought that was too much time to not move the ball forward on substantive items. And I think everybody acknowledges, Mr. Kozis, that you are really an expert on these categories in the city, and you really know this stuff inside out, backwards and forwards. So, I also wanted people to be able to ask you questions and see if you had any kind of gut reactions to what we were talking about. With that, Councillor Downs, let me turn it to you to share, what you've been gathering behind the scenes, and then we'll take the conversation from there.
Yeah, thank you. I think the most substantive thing was our discussion with the law department on the ticket cost. And, they've also said we can easily update the residential permit pricing or adjust it so that we have a minimum of $25 spent for parking in a place with where you need a parking meter, whether you get two of the guest permits or you get a permit that you stick on your car. And we just need to decide as a committee how we want to handle that, whether we want to make each one of them $25 or just have a minimum of 25, however you do it, or have the 25 plus 25 for the two visitor parkings. But the more to the point was the fines. So what does a ticket cost? And Ms. Wilson from the law department found that we can increase our parking fines to a maximum of $25. That's the maximum, except for accessible spaces and curb ramps, which can go higher, and bus stops, which she recommended we go with 100 because that's what should be charged. It's consistent across every other municipality, and it's what the MBTA puts on their signs. And the final one is parking in a bike lane, which can be $50. And that is the maximum fine for that. All the others have, according to a law she was able to find, and I'm happy to share with you, a state law, it caps out all parking fines at $25. That still leaves a lot of room on some of our fines that we talked about that are safety related, for them to go up by $5 or $10. And I will put together a chart showing you that. We also had a chat with the mayor's office and the administration about what the work we're doing. And they said after the budget is released, they wanted to get together across departments and discuss this and come to us with a proposal. So after April 22nd, they said they'd get together and they would come together and ask us, sort of see what they think the fines should be, and also how they feel about permit fees. And then the only other thing to update you on besides that was, there are two items on the ticket. This thing that we got from Captain Divine that our PCOs never use. One is, or three of them, safety zones. We need to define what that is. Angle parking only. They think we can get rid of that one. And within the service zone, they don't know what that is. So they're doing some more research, but we may be able to shorten the ticket by those three items. And I think that's where we are. So now at this point, it's kind of up to the committee to decide where we want to go with this. Whether we want to start out with some areas that we want to increase fines or reduce fines, or whether we want to wait for the administration and how we feel about the residential permit.
Okay, so first of all, Mr. Kosis, let me turn to you for a second. I don't know if you've had a chance to review any of the previous meetings that we've had on these topics, and if you're fully up to speed on what these docket items are about and what we're trying to do.
I would say a limited amount. I have had some discussions with Councilor Downs, but I did not go to, and I have a general idea of, what this is all about. I think that I discussed with Councilor Downs one option that could be considered for the, the permit fees and the visitor fees. I don't know how far along you already are as a committee. I could share that idea at some point if you'd like.
Yeah, so I think we would be interested in hearing that. Let me first sort of check in with the committee procedurally. So on these two items, one of which is the resident permit and guest parking permit fees, and the second of which is the fines and fees. I think our first threshold question is, do you want to keep working on them as a committee and try to arrive at what we think makes sense? Or do you want to wait for the mayor to have an opportunity to convene members of different parties across the administration and have them come to us? The one caveat being, I don't know at this point what that timeline would be. I think my own feeling too is that knowing now that we have these caps, particularly on the fines, it strikes me that we have a pretty limited range to operate within, so I'm not sure. Personally, I kind of don't see why we need to wait. But I want to see what other people think too. And if you would rather wait and have them come to us, or if you think we should proceed and come to them with our ideas. And Councillor Lucas, then Greenberg, then Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think we need to wait for the administration to weigh in on this. This is the responsibility of the city council. We should be advised by the law department, which I believe we already have, about the maximum number of the maximum, not number of fines, the maximum amount of the fine, which I think you said it's $25 in most cases, and $100 in very few cases. I don't think we need to wait. The only question I do have, and I don't know if it's through you to Councillor Downs, or maybe we could get something in writing. Why is the maximum fine $25 for some of the parking fines that we stated earlier, and for reasons that she said in the other parking? You know what I mean? Why is it $25? Sorry.
Sure. And Councillor Downs, why don't you answer that? And by the way, in a committee format, you don't have to formally go through me, so to say. You can just, you
We
know,
can have a conversation.
right, exactly. I mean, I have always saw the role of the chair, particularly in the Zoom environment, is making sure people don't talk over one another, which is why, I think recognizing things, but talking directly is totally appropriate. Councillor Downs, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I'm happy to send this to the whole committee. Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 20A sets forth a $25 statutory limit on fines for parking violations. Abandoned vehicles is a different process, and there's a civil fine of $250 for the first and $500 for subsequent offenses, but it's an extensive process and governed by state statute. Again, I can send that all to you. And as I said, the exemptions are by, when they pass a law individually, and they apparently did so on accessible spaces, on bus stops, and on bike lanes. So those have separate laws applying to them, but otherwise our cap is 25. And why don't I just copy this and send that to the committee?
Sure.
So it'll be in your email.
Councillor Downs, you had noted in our conversation with the law department that some examples of outliers from this law in other municipalities, and I don't think we have a great answer to why anomalies in other communities exist, other than perhaps lack of awareness or compliance with this particular statute. But do you agree with that?
Exactly. It's the speculation is they just didn't know. So just like we didn't know, for instance, that that our $15 fine for blocking a bus stop is out of compliance with state law, which says it has to be $100. So.
Councillor Lucas, does that answer your question?
Yes, I am all set. And as just to reiterate, I don't think we need to wait for the administration. I think we can do this probably at our next meeting when we just get a list of the fines and the proposed amounts, and I send it through. So
Will
I'm all
do.
set. Thank you.
I do think that we probably have to do it as a separate docket item. Counselor Downs and I discussed that with the law department as well. I think it would just be cleaner because that way it can also be referred properly to the finance committee after we have a chance to review it. So, well, let's hear what everybody else has to say, but what might make sense would be to hold this item just in case while we docket a new item. Counselor Greenberg and then Wright.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I agree. I don't think we should wait, especially if the administration gets delayed with other issues that they're dealing with. I think that if we present them with our plan and idea, that would force them to go ahead and show us what they're thinking, and then we can come up with a solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Wright, then Block.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm surprised to hear the $25 fine is the maximum, because I thought a couple of years ago I got a parking ticket in Boston. It was like $40, and that was at a meter. And it doesn't make sense for Boston because you might pay $40 for parking. It's just cheaper to risk the ticket than actually pay for parking in a lot or something. But I was surprised that 25 is the maximum because I don't think Boston is following that. And second, I think we should just proceed ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So Counselor Downs, remind me if you remember this the same way, but I recall our legal counsel telling us that Boston has a different set of laws than
Boston
other-
gets exempted from things that apply to the rest of the state. And I recall I remember something else like that. I think it may be the 40B law as well. But that's what Council Wilson said, is she said Boston has a special law that allows it to have higher parking fines.
Now, Brookline, for example, it, to our knowledge, does not. Oh, and we're being joined by Counselor Lipoff right now. Let me acknowledge him when he can actually hear me acknowledge him. We've also been joined by Counselor Lipoff. Hello. So like Brookline does not have this exemption as far as I know, but you had noted examples of where they're over the limit. And just this past weekend, I was at a ward school night out at Fenway Park and saw signs all over the place about how fines increase during Red Sox games. So
yes. Brookline may have gotten a home rule petition on that because, again, what they're looking at is parking management. And when you're looking at parking management, you're allowed to do different things. And if you're just trying to discourage people from parking in an intersection or double parking, they have two others that are outliers: the restricted area and the overnight parking in the winter. It's actually overnight parking anytime is $30. And both of those are $30, but they don't otherwise have anything outside of like meter violations and overtime parking. I think we can increase those just because it's all about, and this was covered under the Municipal Modernization Act, it's all about making sure that your parking management works. So if your accumulated meter fees, and I know they are after 2 hours near Fenway Park in the St. Mary's area, the meter fees quickly add up after the first 2 hours, and they need their fines to be subsequently more expensive in order to make it more expensive not to pay the meter than to pay the meter.
Counselor Block.
Thank you. I agree that we should continue with our own discussions. I was looking at the Brookline and Boston fee structure for various violations. And it just seems to me that we should consider the possibility of going to the state legislature and asking for a home rule petition to change some of these. I don't think we should, just because that might take a while, I don't think we should ignore that possibility. And I think that would give us more flexibility as we think about this. So that's it for now.
That's a good thought. And what we could always do is raise our fines as we see fit within the confines of the current statute and simultaneously work on a home rule petition. Okay, so it seems that the consensus is to proceed, particularly on the fees and fines. I'm definitely hearing that. And it seems to me too that the proposals are going to be pretty straightforward in terms of what we think makes sense. So particularly on 364-24, then our task is to add a column to our fines and fees chart with a number that we think is appropriate, with a new docket item. And then have that be referred to both PS&T and finance and proceed along those lines. Is there general consensus? Yes, okay. In that case, Mr. Kozis and Captain Devine, before I ask for a motion to hold on 364-24, do you have anything you want to add on that on those topics, which are the fines and fees?
From the
Well,
police and,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Captain.
Dave, you go ahead.
This is the first time I've listened to this discussion, but I was just thinking about the $200 fine that we have for blocking a curb cut. You know, the pedestrian, curb cut to get from the street onto the sidewalk. Would that fit? Are we actually allowed to charge that much? That is something that our division, we handle the parking ticket appeals and hearings, and whenever anyone gets a ticket for blocking a curb cut, we often get a hearing or an appeal. And so I was wondering, the $200 for actually parking in an accessible space is allowed, but what about for blocking the curb cut?
Do you know the answer offhand, Counselor Downs?
I don't, but I see that blocking a curb cut is $100 kind of across the board. Ours is 200. And I believe that was set by the Disabilities Commission. My personal feeling is I wouldn't mess with that. That would be my gut on that one, but I understand. I mean, it certainly gets people's attention. David, did you want to go in a little bit more on your thoughts around the permits, or
Well,
let's
hold
keep
on
it
one
clean
sec.
and yeah.
Let's just keep it. Let me hear from Captain Devine on the fines one, because I think that one we're going to be done discussing, and then we should go over to the permits. Captain
Okay.
Devine?
From a policing perspective, we haven't raised the fines in a while, and what Councilor Downs a few months ago would do researching the surrounding towns. I think the city of Newton's more than ready to adjust those fines to match the surrounding communities. So, but we support obviously anything you guys want to do, and we'll certainly enforce them.
Thank you. So I think the appropriate motion, if everyone agrees, would be a motion to hold on 364-24. Can I have such a motion if?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion to hold by Counselor Downs on 364-24. Any other discussion before we vote? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of hold, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that one's held. Let's talk about 365-24 for a second, which is the parking program and fee situation. Mr. Kozis, we would love to hear what your train of thought was on that. And we're not going to hold you to anything. We've really just been trying to understand the situation and think about, if we were to change it, what unintended consequences we might be creating, making sure that we're solving the problem we're trying to solve. So would love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, and I have not participated so far, but maybe I could see if I could share. Okay. So my understanding was that the concern of the committee is that the vast majority of residents don't pay for parking stickers. They just come and get the placard, the transferable placard, the free 2 placards. And so it seems like there was interest in either charging for the placards or charging for the more for the stickers. Is that right?
I think that sums it up.
Okay. So this is just, maybe it's helpful to look at a table and, so this is just one idea. If this is the goal, so that people don't just get the free transferable placards, something like this could be considered, where if someone comes over to the traffic bureau and they they don't want to have a sticker. Stickers are helpful because they get attached onto your vehicle, right? And you don't have to remember to put the placard there every time you park on the street. But if they still don't want any stickers, but they want the guest passes, maybe then you could charge $25 for one guest pass, or $50 for two guest passes. But then if they do buy a sticker for $25, then they could get a free guest pass. Or they can, pay $25 if they want a second guest pass. But then if they buy two stickers, then you can get two free visitor passes. That's just an option. So it
So
doesn't
I'm
get
not
too
sure I
expensive.
understand the chart. I understand your words, but I don't know that I understand how the chart reflects exactly what you said. So line 4, I understand.
This
If
line?
no, line 4 where the number of resident stickers is 0.
Oh, this one.
Right. So
Yeah.
you don't buy a sticker, but you
So
want a guest pass, you pay $25 per
for
guest
one
pass.
pass, yeah,
right?
or
Right.
$50 if you want two guest passes.
If you want to. Now, if you pay $25 for a resident sticker,
Then you can get a free visitor pass.
okay, so then, like in my mind, then that would either say 0 or free rather than,
Well, this would be the total amount that you would pay.
I see.
the
So
sum,
one
yeah.
guest pass, one sticker, $25.
Yeah, one guest pass, one sticker, two guest passes, $50.
50.
Two
Two
stickers,
stickers, one guest
One guest
pass, 50.
50. And then
Two
two and two,
stickers,
50.
two guest passes.
So anytime
also-
you buy a sticker, you get a free guest pass.
Okay, so essentially, if you bought 2 stickers, you would automatically get 2 free guest passes.
Yeah. It sort of limits, how much a resident would pay.
So when we were discussing this with the mayor, she kept sort of asking back why would we charge for guest passes? And I think the point that I was trying to convey, I want to make sure everybody else saw it similarly, is it's not necessarily that I feel strongly about charging for guest passes. It's just that to me, if we have already decided that there should be a cost to purchasing this residential parking permit, which makes perfect sense because we have hardworking employees who have to process and do the work and organize and administer and enforce the system, then it shouldn't be the case that we've decided you should pay for this, but in fact, people are getting it for free. That was my own thought to put out there as others comment from here. Counselor Block.
Thank you. I thought the last time we talked about this, we were kind of heading towards a principle that there ought to be a charge for each item, whatever those items are. I mean, we've kind of gotten ourselves into this quirky situation where because the guest passes are free, people just claim them and use them on their own car, or use them any way they want to. And if we want to discourage that, then just charge for each one. Charge 25 for your sticker and 25 for each guest pass. You don't have to buy the guest passes if you don't want them. But otherwise, if we sort of take the mayor's question, rhetorical perhaps, and David's proposal here, the the single resident sticker would just come with a guest pass. That would be the package. I mean, there's no reason not to. If you're going to charge for the sticker but not charge for the guest pass, the same with 2 stickers. The only issue is if you have one car and only want 1 sticker, well, maybe you want two guest passes. So then I guess you'd be paying, at least in this proposal, and again, I suspect this was sort of what the mayor was thinking, that you'd pay for the sticker, but not for the first guest pass, but maybe you'd be charged for the second guest pass. I mean, I think you get into these sort of quirky situations, which I think are resolved if we just say each item costs $25, whatever you want, here it is. And if you want a sticker, it's 25. If you don't want a sticker, but you just want a guest pass, that's 25, etc. And I think it just becomes a lot easier to understand for everybody. That's my thought about this.
I
Okay,
think what Dave's trying to do is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, you're just trying to cap it at 50, right? $50, because a lot of people come into the PD and they don't need the sticker because they don't have a car themselves. They just might have family come and maybe someone to help them out, some caretaker type of thing. So not everyone wants the sticker. So in this case, if someone comes and gets a sticker, they could still only get 2 guest passes and still cost them 50. So am I fair to say, Dave, it's a capping at $50?
Yeah, that was my thought.
And I agree with that philosophy what Dave's doing there, because so many people come in just wanting the free permits and we just issue them because they can, and there's just, I guess, cap the number of permits out there. Or
But that goal is achieved if people don't want a sticker and you're charging $25 for each of these items, then $50 is still the cap. They would just not buy the sticker. And but if they do buy the sticker, yeah, they could end up paying $75.
Yeah, so someone comes in right now, they want the sticker, we give them the sticker and 2 guest passes. So I don't want to talk to them, I guess, what, $75, we would cap them at 50. I think would be fair. Some people don't want the sticker, it's still 50. So I think it's all fair. I think the way Dave did it was a good idea.
okay, let me take the next couple comments. Counselor Downs and then Counselor Wright.
Yeah, so the mayor kept saying, why not give something out for free? Why can't the city do something nice for its residents and give away the resident permits, the guest passes, even if they are used for the residents' cars? And as I'm thinking about it, the only places where we have resident permits needed are areas where parking demand is really high. And the residents or their guests then need a method to override the limitations on the very hard limitations on the amount of time you can spend parked in that neighborhood so that the entire neighborhood doesn't get parked up. But I think when you're using valuable public space and it's valuable enough that we're reducing the amount of time that any particular person who doesn't live there can park in that space, it should still come with a cost for even our residents, because they're using a very valuable asset, very valuable public asset. And the other reason that we should have some sort of payment is that we are, all of us, whether we get a permit or not, whether we live in a permitted area or not, are paying for the time of the staff who are administering this program. So while we probably shouldn't charge more than the permit program costs us, we should at least try to recover some, if not most, of the cost out of it, just fairness.
Okay, sorry, I'm just looking at these different chart options. Okay, thank you. Counselor Wright, then Counselor Lucas.
Oh, thank you. I agree with Counselor Block And to quote again, there's no free parking. And I think we should be charging it. Now, one question I have is this guest parking. Councilor Downs said something, it's limited the amount of time people can park on the street. Is that during the day, or are we talking about overnight parking permits?
No, this is only during the day when there are time limitations. We don't have yet any kind of restriction on overnight parking because we have the winter overnight parking ban.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kozis, maybe you know the answer to this, but in the different neighborhoods where these permits are utilized, are the hours of daytime parking different from neighborhood to neighborhood, or is it standard?
Yeah, different. It depends. So I have this chart that sort of shows the different neighborhood parking districts we have, and how many streets are in each. And so it really does depend. For example, in Newtonville, it's only school days, right? It's not the whole year round. It's only when Newton North, when it's needed. So they're all tailored. It's not consistent across each of these different districts.
And I'm just thinking about some of the different areas like around, oh no, that's there, the Woburn Village Parking District. That's around Ainger School, right?
Right. So that's also school
Some of
days.
the streets.
Oh no, that's not school days. I think that was also a concern for commuter parking right near the Green Line. So that's all. I think that's all year.
That's also all year.
And Captain Devine, would you say in most of these cases that enforcement of these permits and the hours, is it largely complaint driven, or are these neighborhoods regularly checked by our parking control officers?
I would say there's a heavy number of that are complaint driven on these residential ones. PCOs are very good in all aspects of the job. They do focus on the metered spots, and sometimes they know of areas where there's certain like high levels of violations. Around Newton North, they've been given like Elm Road, different roads like that, where either students know to kind of manipulate the rules a little bit or someone, so they'll focus on that on their own. But a lot of that is complaint driven though.
Okay. Councilor Wright, did you want to add more?
Oh, nope, I'm done. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Councilor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you, Mr. Kosis, for putting these displays up on the screen. I think we can say it's clear and obvious that we need to close the loophole and move on from the current system. And I am with Councilor Block. Just make it the simplest method. $25 for a sticker, $25 for one guest pass, and then essentially $50 if you want 2 guest passes. $25 across the board. Let's not make this any more complicated than what it needs to be. We would close the loophole and we would charge the same thing across the board. That's all.
Okay, so just, I want to make sure that I think I understand the crux of the issue that, I mean, essentially we're looking at a cap then of $100 is the most you could be asked to spend looking at the middle chart. So somebody could come in for one address, somebody could come in and purchase 2 resident stickers and 2 guest passes, excuse me, and Captain Devine would ask them for $100. And it sounds to me that we're hearing from Mr. Kosis and Captain Devine that number feels high. But so far from members of the committee, I'm hearing that people feel that number is appropriate. If I've misconstrued that, correct me. Okay, Councilor Downs.
Yeah, so I would say I'm more inclined to do something a little less expensive. Not that I don't want to charge people for parking, I do. But I am sensitive to, how this will look and feel to residents. So, they go from getting 2 free permits to now every permit being $25 and possibly having to pay $100 just to park on their own street. And while that's, while it's good to discourage long-term parking on our public streets for, where it's in high demand, I think you want to price it right. So you want some spaces to be taken and some spaces to always be available. And I also think there are people for whom, that's still real money. So I'm inclined to go with, $50 for the one that goes into, it sticks to your car, which is currently what we're doing. 25 is what we're doing for the one that sticks to your car. Whether it's 1 or 2, you pay 25 each. And for the guest passes, say you can get 1 guest pass with your sticker, or you can pay some. I think David's original proposal of, you're paying $25 and you get 1 free guest pass. You're paying $50 and you get 2 free guest passes. And if you're only buying a guest pass, you pay $25. And if you're getting 2 guest passes, then, we can talk about whether that's 25 for 2 or 25 each. That I'm willing to do, especially since we have people who are only buying guest passes so they can have people over for coffee in the middle of the day or for their bridge club, right? So we want to give them a little, we want them to be able to entertain on occasion.
Counselor Block.
Thank you. I have a question. If somebody has 3 cars, can they get 3 resident stickers? I just see the 2 here, but is the 2 the maximum? It is. Okay. All right. Just curious.
You can, the only caveat to it is you're allowed 2 stickers per household, 2 guest passes. If you run some kind of like maybe therapeutic or some kind of like a health type of thing at your house, you can get a third guest pass to your house.
Okay.
Business there.
So if we started charging by the guest pass, somebody might be eligible for a 3rd one, I guess. I keep coming back to a principle which Councillor Downs has mentioned many times in this committee and in the city council, that public street parking is costly. It's we treat it pretty much like it's free, but we really shouldn't. And grappling with that is, I think, in some ways what we're doing now. And if we want to help, if we want to take a position that parking has a cost to it, it isn't free, it had to be built, it has to be maintained, and $25 is, for most people in Newton, I'm sure there are exceptions, this is a pretty modest fee for each one of these things. They may add up to $100 if you want the maximum, but if you just have 1 car and you just want 1 guest pass, or you don't want any guest passes, so then it's a $25 or a $50 charge, and you, the customer, you, the resident, are in charge of deciding how much of this you want. I think when we start to try and figure out the packages, then I think it's just going to get to a point where something's free. If we want to cap this at $50, well then 1 sticker comes with one guest pass. That's package one. 2 stickers comes with 2 guest passes. That's package 2, and you're paying 25 for the first or 50 for the second. If someone wants to decline the guest pass, I suppose they can do that, but why should they? They may have some unexpected situation. So we could set up this system that way. But again, I think that undermines the principle that we're trying to follow here, which is access to parking on a public street has a cost, and probably a much bigger cost than even we would recognize. I mean, I've never seen, okay, what did it cost to build a street? What's the cost of the bond that paid for that work? And what's the cost of the maintenance? I mean, it would be interesting. Um, Charging $25 seems pretty modest to me, but that's just my perception. I grant you, and I don't know what to do about this, that there are people that forget $100, $25 is a big deal, and they have to have a car. Um, and I don't know if we have any extenuating circumstances that we want to take into account. I'd be interested in seeing what those are in other towns, if other towns do that, and what it would be here. But I think if we don't charge for each one discreetly, we're gonna set up a situation that I think we're not going to be happy with in the end. That's just my view of it. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Downs.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Councillor Block's really interesting argument. And I in principle agree. But you have to also understand that there's a perception of fairness. There are neighborhoods like mine where you can park all day on the street and outside of winter parking ban all night on the street, and you will never get a ticket for that because it's in such low demand, it's free. And there are other neighborhoods where there's almost no parking and you're scrounging around for places to park. And yeah, we charge for a resident parking permit because people who live on the street need to have some access to street parking, and sometimes need to overstay. And in other places, I mean, if you're parking on Washington Street in front of Trio, you're not going to stay there all day. You don't get a parking permit. You are going to have to move, and you're going to have to pay for a space in the underground parking lot if you are a resident there. That's kind of how market regulated parking works. And what we're trying to do is to set a price, and we're doing it across the city, which is inherently not going to be perfect. But the perception will be, well, so-and-so both has a driveway and has unlimited on-street parking, but over here we have to pay, and $100 feels like a lot. So that's why I would go for a baby step in between. Personally, I'm happy to see where the committee comes out, and I'm happy to see where the council comes out. But I suspect a package with a $50 or a $75 cap, it's going to be a little easier to pass than 25 per.
Mr. Kozis and Captain Devine, I don't know if you know, but in the different neighborhoods that we're talking about, do you have any sense of how many of these folks have off-street parking available to them, either on a driveway or a garage? Because I don't think we're talking necessarily about a situation where residents need to park on their own street all the time. I know there are obviously neighborhoods in the city where that, is the case, but for most of these folks, are there driveways and garages in their neighborhoods? Anybody know?
So most of these, because of the overnight parking ban,
Mm-hmm.
Most residents have a place to park their car. When the overnight parking ban goes away, that may change. But right now, most people have a place off street to park their car. The reason they might want to park in the street, same reason we have people who want to have an exemption from the overnight parking ban. It's because their front door opens onto the street, and that's the door without the stairs, or it's the door with the least amount of walking, or it's the easiest to pull in and out of, or they have company and they only have room for one car or two cars, and they happen to have those spaces totally filled up. So that's why we have the permits and give residents a little extra flexibility.
And
I'm
maybe
trying
I
to
can-
think. I'm sorry, Mr. Kozis, go
No,
ahead.
I was just going to add on a little bit more to that. I agree. I think that most houses have driveways. There's always the one-off in different neighborhoods. But the other reason that we have some of these village parking districts, like in Newton Corner or Charles Bank area, is because we already had like a 2-hour limit on the streets. And the residents who lived there wanted to be able to park longer than 2 hours. So it's sort of like an overlay. It's a 2-hour limit, except now we're offering you a resident permit so that you could park longer than the 2-hour limit, even if you might have, an off-street space.
Right. A lot of the times people will say, well, I'll go in, I'll unpack the groceries, and I'll forget.
Right.
Right. Something else came up, the baby started crying, something like that. And so they ask us for a permit, so they get a little extra flexibility around getting in and out of the car. Or the bridge game lasts longer than 2 hours, and they want to have a couple of friends over, and those friends aren't in walking distance. And
Right.
as Captain Devine said, we have apparently some people who don't have a car or don't buy a permit for their own car, but want to be able to allow their friends to come visit and stay a little longer than the time limit.
And as a reminder, Captain Devine, I know you shared this with us in the past, if somebody is having work done on either a short-term or longer-term basis, they can get whether it's a permit or a guest pass or a something for free.
Yes, if someone comes and says, I'm having side work done on my work inside a house for about a week, we won't charge them anything. We'll just say, all right, we'll just consider it for a week. If they say I'm having an electrician, X, Y, and Z, they're gonna be here for a month, 2 months, then we charge them a $10 fee per vehicle that could be on the street. But if it's just like 3 or 4 days, like they maybe in their driveway repaved, we just give them for free as a courtesy. Other than that, if it goes longer than that, we make them for a $30 contractor pass, if you want to say, and that's $10 for 30 days. I'm sorry.
For the 3 to 4 day one, is there a piece of paper that they walk out the door with to put in a car, or you
There's
just
a lot of times someone calls, maybe they're having a week at the house and they're looking for the next 2 days, gonna be lots of cars as they do whatever. We just take the address, we call the PCO, and says give consideration to X, Y, and Z for the day or for the next 3 days. If it starts tailoring on longer than a week, then we say, all right, how long you have it for? Once we hear it's like a week and a half, 2 weeks, like, all right, then you have the 30-day pass, which would give it just $10 per vehicle.
okay? We have a couple more hands. Let me see other thoughts. Counselor Bixby, then Counselor Lucas.
Thanks, Chair. So I guess a couple questions and thoughts. First of all, in addition to the construction exemption, Captain Devine, is there also, I think there's also something for the overnight parking for like home health care aides or similar situations. Is that true?
Generally, no, the overnight
No.
parking stands for everyone. I would say there's probably been about maybe 5 to 10 cases where Ginny Fairley from the COD, the Disability Commission, will reach out to me saying there's this circumstance that needs our consideration. We do grant that, but I would say it's less than 10 for the whole city, which I granted last winter for overnight parking. But generally, overnight parking, we try to minimize that any type of
Okay.
exemption.
Thanks. Because that might be one consideration. And I guess just a thought based on the previous conversation about why people might need, or be looking for this. I think a number of, I mean, at least in the Highlands, where there's a lot of sort of driveways that accommodate one car, or are tandem, so you're parked, you're parking somebody else in when you're in them, just as, so being able to park on the street for longer, or for somebody who's coming as a home healthcare situation might just be one factor to consider. I think the points that both Councillor Block and Councillor Downs were making are really interesting and good ones on the cost. And as you both were speaking, I was thinking, another thing that we could offer people, and I don't know exactly how we do this, would be to make it easier to get the permits. Right now, you have to go in, right, annually to the police station to
Yeah.
get them.
That's the whole, if we charge enough, then we could do it online.
Yeah, so that's another complicating factor of the whole conversation, but just a thought, I'm sorry, because I know, some of the issue is cost, and some of the issue is finding the time and, the ability to get in, to go do it. So again, I'm just throwing that out there, understanding that I don't have the full picture on how that would work or anything. Thanks.
Okay, Counselor Lucas and Counselor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the chart in front of us right now, Newtonville is approximately 1/3 of the total number of what's it, streets? Is that what we're counting here? Streets? And I'm pretty sure, just by that logic, that Newtonville is the largest area. And I have the map in front of me right here that I got from the city's website. And I'm looking at it, and I'm willing to bet that probably 95%, at least, at a minimum, 95% have off-street parking available. I do not believe $25 for every sticker and for every guest pass is too burdensome. It's $25, and if it's in Newtonville, I think it's only during school days. And if you do the math, it comes out to, I think it was $14 a day. I think $25 is fine, going again with Councillor Block's proposal. Thank you.
Tell me the math, $14 a day. Explain that further.
Did I say $14?
Yeah.
Is that what I thought so?
Oh, I was doing.
That'd be used up in 2 days.
Excuse me. Timeout. I meant 14 cents a day.
Okay.
Sorry about that, everyone. Apologies.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood your point. That's all. Okay.
Yeah, all set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Wright.
Yes, I was a little confused by that math too. Just a quick question. How many people, or a percentage or a rough idea, come in asking for all 4 passes?
Captain Devine, do you remember that?
Yeah, I would say an overwhelming majority come in for the 2 guest passes. That's it. I would say that's probably about 70%. I would say about 20% come in looking for 1 sticker and 2 guest passes, and about 10% looking for 2 stickers and 2 guest passes. That's just a rough estimate, but I think it's a pretty good number right there.
Thank you.
Can you remind us, I know you told us the last time, I don't know if you have it in front of us now. Can you remind us on the guest passes, how many people came in just for guest passes?
All right, the tricky thing is sometimes I know we've issued over about anywhere in the mid 800 range of guest passes. Now you'd say that's what 400 people requested it, but that's also not factoring how many of them got stickers out of that too. So we've given out about 800 guest passes.
And we gave out how many stickers?
Stickers 162. So 162 to be 334-ish, I guess, would be attributed to. Again, so we don't know if there's 2 stickers per family or 1 sticker per family, but we've issued 162 stickers.
Okay.
And
But
we've
And
aren't the
also-
get,
hold on one sec. Captain Devine, go first.
One last thing, we've issued about 92 of those 30-day contracted passes where they want to work in front of a house. We spoke about a minute ago. We've
Yep.
issued 92 of those.
92 this year.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, Counselor Wright, why don't you finish your thought?
aren't the guest passes now free? So people who might get a sticker instead will go the cheaper way out and just get guest pass.
That's what I would say 70% of people do, just come in, ask for 2 guest passes and leave. And that's what we, I guess, trying to correct here is eliminate all these free passes, I guess, right?
Right. Okay, and Counselor Greenberg.
Thank you, Chair. I'm leaning toward David Kosis's suggestion, mostly because it's not a less drastic change from what's happening now. But that's my thought so far. Thank you.
I'll admit, I'm a little torn between the very compelling arguments. On the one hand, we tend to do things when we make change in small increments in the city to kind of get people used to the change slowly. On the other, I'm struggling with, do we just go straight to what I think is the fair value? And in fact, I still think even the cap of $100 is, when we're talking about the value of the asset we're considering, I think the value of the asset far outweighs $100, but I'm a little torn myself. So, and Mr. Kozis, you added in another chart, so maybe you wanted to talk through that one as well.
I think that I just added in this other chart after, I forget, one of the counselors was concerned about the price being too high. So instead of $25 for each individual sticker or guest pass, I just thought, well, what if it's $10 for each one? It's just another option for the committee to consider.
Counselor Block.
Just based on the numbers that Captain Devine mentioned, which I didn't write down, but the percentage of people coming in and getting the 2 stickers and the 2 guest passes was pretty small. It was 10%, I think. So, and that's with the guest passes being free. So I don't expect that number to go up if we started charging for guest passes. So if we're worried about people having sticker shock at having to part with $100, let's just say it's 10% of the customers that are needing stickers or guest passes. So most of the people who come in, 70% come in, just pick up guest passes, 1 or 2 guest passes. So they're free right now. So we don't know how many of those people would come back if they had to pay even $10 for each one. And that just feels just too limited to my mind. We might as well charge 25, I would say, but so 70% currently come in and just get guest passes. Those are the people who would go from paying $0 to paying $25 or $50. The people who get a sticker, they're paying for a sticker, and they probably also get 1 or 2 free guest passes, because why not? They're showing up. We really need to get away from just giving, handing something over because of a why not. It just devalues the whole kind of structure. So I would grudgingly say, well, all right, if we want to price it a little differently, you could say $25 for a sticker and $20 for a guest pass. Whatever you want, get 1 or 2. stickers, get 1 or 2 guest passes. Here's the price list, and whatever you want, we'll charge you. So you could trim it a little bit like that, but I wouldn't. I still think it's a very important principle that each one of these stickers or passes has value, and I think the average person realizes that they have value. So having a cost attached to them, I don't think will be. I mean, people would rather keep 10 or 20 or whatever dollars than part with it, but I think people will understand why we're we're changing this so that each one of these items costs something.
Counselor Downs.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here. If people are coming in and just getting the free guest passes, that suggests that the we're clearly not doing that many guest passes. So worry would be that by charging, you would have fewer people getting those guest passes, period, which is fine. I agree with Councillor Block. It probably each one of them needs a price, but as we're doing this now under David Kozis's initial suggestion, we are charging. You get one and a guest pass, a sticker and a guest pass for 25, or you get a guest pass alone for 25, or you get 2 guest passes for 50. So you are being charged for a minimum of 25 and a maximum of 50, which I think is fair, but is fairly modest. Now, if we go to charging 10 for each guest pass, so you just buying guest passes, you spend 10, it's a little less than 25. You buy 2 of them, it's 20. That's also a little less than 25. It's fine. We can certainly do that as well instead. But let's not fool ourselves into thinking that we're giving away free parking here. We still are charging for the parking. We're just charging a little bit more than $10.
Can I?
I'm a little confused. Yeah, go ahead, Counselor Block.
Well, I just want to comment. Again, we're trying to establish a system here that's logical. And we've got to be careful if we're going to have a different price for the sticker than the guest pass. We're going to invite people to game the system. They really need a sticker, but they might as well get the guest pass. Right now, the guest pass is 0 cost. So it's an easy call for them. If the sticker is $25 and the guest pass is, let's say, $10, because I don't know, we feel warmer and fuzzier about guests, and I don't know, we think it's sort of we want to encourage that or something. Then you're going to get people who would normally buy a resident sticker. Say, well, why should they pay $25 for a resident sticker? I'll pay 10. Just like now they pay nothing. So you're going to get
Right.
you're going to get the same tension. My gut is if we charge 25 for the sticker and 20 for the guest pass, that people probably wouldn't worry too much about the $5 differential. They would, if they really need the sticker for their car, they'll pay the 25. Although some might pay 20, but there's still a significant value to both of them. If you, I think back to the comment though from Councillor Downs that if we're charging $25 for a package. You're gonna get a sticker and one guest pass and cost $25. Then everybody, I mean, that's a plausible, and if you're gonna get two resident stickers, you get two guest passes. I mean, if you want to decline them, fine, but that's the expectation. And one's $25 and the other's $50, and that's it. So if somebody comes in and they want a guest pass, well, we don't sell guest passes on their own. I mean,
Oh, no, it does have you do get the option of just getting guest passes.
well, you have the, I guess, I mean, the way I think about it, you'd be declining the resident sticker. I mean, if it's the same price for one guest pass or one guest pass and a resident sticker, then somebody might
Buy
as
one,
well
get
take
one
them.
free.
They might as well take them
Throw
both.
it out if you want, right?
But
mean, what-
but I thought your proposal, maybe I may have misunderstood you. I thought your proposal is to charge $10 for each guest pass, at which point, you know, the $25 for a sticker and a guest pass is still more money than if you buy two guest passes.
I-
You know what I'm saying?
I think it was David Kozis that put up the $10 per guest pass option. I would not favor that. I can understand the package deal, $25 for one sticker and one guest pass. If you want to decline the sticker, it's still $25. If you want to decline the guest pass, it's still $25. Most people will just walk out with both, even if they don't use the other one. They'll just take it because why not? And the same with two. Again, I think that it doesn't deal with the principle that these passes have value. And I think we should put a price on them. And the price, if the price isn't identical, like $25 each or $20 each, then I don't think the differential should be more than $5. I think we start inviting people to game this, and you know, we don't need that. We don't want to invite that. But I also understand the point. Well, maybe the council doesn't want to come across as you know, being
Greedy.
whatever adjective I'm not quite reaching for greed, but okay, it's not like anybody's taking this money home. I mean, it's going to the city coffers because these all have value, and we want to start getting in the habit of valuing things like this, because if we don't, we're gonna get in trouble elsewhere. We want to have variable pricing, for example, in our municipal lots, because certain times of the day are more in demand, and we want to kind of manage that. I mean, that's a, you know, people could object, oh, you know, you're just overcharging us. But again, I think the principle is very important, and I don't think we should move away from it. We should embrace it and say, what's the implication here? Each one of these is valuable. So having say $25 and you can have both, well, I don't think in people's minds they'll really look at it that each one of these is now being valued. That's just my comment. I'm done for now.
So I was going to use the word rather than greedy, punitive. But one of the things that keeps coming back to my mind, and then Councilor Downs, let me know if you want to add more, is also, are we trying to learn anything from this? And to Councilor Block, to your point about the, you know, sort of why not attitude of, well, here, come in, it's $25 for this package of a resident permit and a guest pass, you know, take it and do what you want with it, whether you want to use one or both of these things, they're still $25. If we do that, we don't learn why the person came in for that thing. We don't actually know if what they value is the resident sticker or the guest pass or both. And my gut reaction is not to go with a plan where a guest pass is slightly less or a lot less than the resident permit for exactly the points that you made, Counselor Block. I feel like if we're going to make a change to get away from the, gaming the system element of what's happening right now, that we should just eliminate that element. It's my personal view. At the moment, I'm leaning more towards the, I don't even know what to call it, middle chart, the 25, 25, 50, 75, 100 scheme. But you guys are changing my mind as you keep talking. So Counselor Downs, go ahead.
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. So here's the other question, because people are going to say, why are you charging? And we're going to say something like, let's cover our costs. Captain Devine, did you ever go through the exercise of figuring out how much time it takes to process every year the resident permits, and what overall you could guesstimate that time is worth? Because I'd like to be able to say, well, our police officers who could be out ticketing vehicles that are overstaying their welcome in the triangle lot in Newton Center are instead processing permits, or instead of going to check on a stray dog or stray child, they're processing permits, and we want to free them up, or we want to have the money to pay them to make this an online system or an automatic system and make it. Did we ever do any of that? Because that would be a good way to approach the rest of the council and say, here's this program has a cost. We want to cover the cost.
As for the cost, we do have the guest passes made by the printing shop in City Hall, so we try to save some cost there. They do some work in there. The stickers, I'm not sure how much we pay for them every year. I know we order them from an outside vendor. On a daily basis, we might have like 5 or 6 people come in daily. We have a clerk here who's here, and then we also have another police officer who helps out. So it's hard to attribute how much time is attributed to this, but every day someone's working on it. That capacity, it's hard to put a number on it though.
Got it. Did you ever look into what it would cost to be able to issue these online the way we did during COVID for a little while?
No company wants to do it because the amount of free passes there are, and they would lose out a ton of money in that. So that's why we can't have any company.
I see. But if we charged $10 a pass, or if we charged $25 a pass, would that make an appreciable difference in being able to attract a vendor?
Yeah, I'm just not sure how. Obviously, if resident A wants to get it, like how do we verify? Someone comes in right now, I'll ask for either a license or registration to prove they live on that street. I'm not sure how we can do that process online. Someone just says, yeah, I live on Fairbanks Road or something like that. I don't know how we can verify it. It can be done, obviously. Other places do it. I just don't know how we can do it right now. We can certainly look into it. I don't know if Mr. Kosas has a better answer on that, if he's heard anything.
Well, I know what we do for the senior passes. We ask that you have to have a license that shows both that you live in Newton and that you're over 65, and then you have the registration of your car that shows that it's registered in Newton. Which would mean that those folks who have their cars registered in New Hampshire wouldn't be able to take advantage of the program. But that's how the senior center does it, and you mail it in. You don't have to be there in person. I don't know if that would work for this system, but it's pretty simple. You just have to copy all those documents and put them in an envelope and send along a check, and then they mail it, and a self-addressed stamped envelope, and they mail it back to you. So I think that's all I have. It'd be interesting to see to like make a motion on either the package with the $50 cap or the 25, 25, 25, 25, and just see where do a straw vote, see where the will of the committee stands, and then we can draft language.
Yeah, so I mean, my thinking was along those same lines. That if we had a motion for one of these, we could take a vote. Although then I was thinking, okay, what happens with the outcome of that vote? Because I think Counselor Downs, what we arrived at is that we still need a new docket item. So,
Exactly, but then at least we have an idea of
right,
what's
so
in that
just
docket.
let me just then summarize what I think the new docket item would look like, because I want to make sure this is your understanding and others too, before anybody votes on anything. So let's say the will of the committee is, I don't know, I'll call it chart B with the cap of $100. Would the new docket item then be the Public Safety and Transportation Committee requesting a change to this program, with chart B, as the suggested amounts? Essentially, if we take that straw vote, is the next docket item then speaking for the committee? Or are we still wanting to docket it as individuals? In case somebody is not comfortable with whatever the committee's decision is. What's your thought on that, Counselor Downs?
I'd say let's do a straw vote, and if people want to, and then we'll put it together. If people don't want to sign on, they don't have to sign on.
Okay, well, let's see, we have two hands, Counselor Lucas and Counselor Block.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious right now as to what Mr. Kostis is working on. I want to see what he has to put up on the screen. But in the meantime, I just want to go back to one of the very first comments that I said with respect to this particular item here. I think our responsibility here is to close the loophole. And Councilor Block's proposal does that. It does. I also would not docket anything as a committee. It should be by each person if they want to sign on to the docket item. And then the last thing I just want to say again is that most of these are in Ward 2, Newtonville, for Newton North High School. That's the ward that I represent on this committee. And again, I am willing to bet that over 95% of those homes have off-street parking. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Counselor Block.
Just a comment on the online purchasing system. I have a seasonal home in Harwich, and they have an online purchasing sticker system. Beach stickers, access to the city recycling center, stickers for the city dump. There must be, I don't know, 8, 10 different kinds of stickers you can purchase, different prices for each one. I think the way they make sure you can either send in a copy of your driver's license, or there must be something else for people like me who have a driver's license in Newton and have a second home. But there's a way in which they have a pretty simple system for verifying that you're entitled to do this. And then there may be a 40-cent charge for each beyond the price for processing. But I think all of this has been worked out. I don't think we have to reinvent that. There's a system out there, and I mean, maybe there are costs that are hidden that a town like Harwich pays that is covered by the fees that they collect. but it's a much smaller place than Newton, so I would think we'd be able to do whatever it is we want to do online. But we'll, that's sort of another little project.
Okay, Counselor Bixby.
I just looked at it. Looks like you can get the older adult parking sticker through NewGov. So I'm happy to. I guess back to my earlier comment. My response does somewhat factor in whether or not we could also try and make this a little bit easier for folks. So I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to participate in a straw vote tonight, but would also encourage us to think about this a little bit. So I'm not sure, but I couldn't go in much further, but it looks like you can. I got as far as putting in my driver's license number, which I don't have handy, and it looks like you can do it through NewGov.
All right, so why don't we then take a straw vote on these different options we have before us? Let's just make sure, because Mr. Kozis, you did reformat the middle, so I want to make sure I understand what we're looking at. Current is on the right. And can we label these? Can we label them on the left option A and in the middle option B? Okay, so option A is essentially the package where you come in, you pay $25, you're going to get a resident sticker and a guest pass, and you can take or leave either one, but you're entitled to one of each. Right? Option B is essentially $25 per item, no matter what that item is, with a cap of 2 of each, 2 resident stickers, 2 guest passes. Option C is the current status quo. Accurate? Okay. Let's take a straw vote and see where we're at. Any other comments or questions before we do that? Okay. All those in favor of option A, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, I see 2, so let's lower hands. All those in favor of option B, raise your virtual hand. Okay, we have 6. And that's everybody, obviously. That's 8. Okay, well, we have our straw vote. So in that case, what I think, unless anybody has any further discussion on this, we probably need a motion to hold this item while we draft a new docket item. I'm happy to draft it with the language that incorporates option B, and whoever wants to sign on to it can sign on to it, and that it would come back to this committee and the finance committee, and I'm sure the mayor would weigh in as well. Councilor Greenberg?
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair. I just have a quick question I just thought of. What was the ticket that would be charged for someone parking in the parking permit area without either a placard or the guest pass?
That currently is $15, and it's the same as overtime parking.
So it's $15.
Yeah, $15 for each violation.
Okay. All right, thank you.
$25 saves you by the second time you've overstayed your welcome.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, thank you.
But the second time you've overstayed, you're welcome, assuming somebody is there to find you.
Of course.
Okay, so any other discussion on this, or can I have a motion to hold this item?
Motion to hold.
Any discussion on the motion to hold? Seeing none, all those in favor of hold, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. That was, we have one more item, but I just want to say that really was a very interesting discussion. And as Councilor Downs winds down her tenure, I'm always going to remember this as the night that others tried to convince Counselor Downs to charge more for parking.
Yeah.
All right, we have one more item to talk about, which is just largely to talk about how we want to attack it. And that's 201-24, which is our request for a policy discussion review and possible action related to parking on street and in municipal lots. Obviously, we had this on our agenda 4 times prior to tonight, and this goes hand in hand with our chair's note at the end to discuss the priorities for the Public Safety and Transportation Committee through the end of the term. So I really just wanted to check in because I don't know how everybody else was feeling about this item, but after our last couple discussions, I felt a little aimless about how to proceed. I really am not sure where to take this item from here, and I've been having a hard time understanding. Well, I suppose what I'm grappling with is the import of the topic juxtaposed with what resources we are armed with to tackle it. I feel I mean we don't have a lot of resources other than resources that we can find on our own. I don't personally feel a great sense of urgency from our colleagues on the administrative side to be, driving toward a solution in advance of the ballot measure, which will be before us in November. And interestingly, I mean, the community interest may change in these coming months. It's been extremely quiet this term in terms of folks really engaging on this issue since the signatures were collected. I have to imagine that's going to ramp up, as we approach election season. But I really just wanted to put this out there to see what everybody else was thinking so that I can, invite people, guide this the way that you best see fit to proceed. Mr. Kostas, I'm going to ask you to comment first, just because, well, for a variety of reasons, but I'd love to hear your thoughts first, if you don't mind sharing. Oh, you just need to unmute.
Sorry. Right, and I haven't participated in this at all so far. So my understanding is that in November, the winter parking ban will be on the ballot. Either it will continue on or it will end, right, based on the popular vote. So, what I was thinking is that if it is rescinded, what could be the case after that happens is that specific streets might, docket items with traffic council to request changes on their specific street, right? So that, we could end up with requests for no overnight parking in the winter, or no overnight parking at all on specific streets throughout the city, which is, that could begin to appear, I think, through the traffic council process. So I think, it might be helpful to get some guidance or a head start, or start to think about how could traffic council respond if we do start to get, dozens of different requests and different types of new overnight parking restrictions, or hundreds of new signs going in on different streets. I don't even know for sure if traffic council could restrict parking in the winter on a specific street after a citywide ban to remove that regulation. So I guess I'll leave it there. It was just something that I've been thinking about.
Right. And I think, to your point, the committee's interest and sort of the reason for docketing and having the discussions was similar in terms of trying to get a little ahead of possible outcomes so that we're kind of ready to move forward with alternatives, depending on the outcome, but we haven't gotten very far. Counselor Block and then Bixby.
Thank you. I've always looked at this item as basically having two parts or two strategies. One assumes that there is no change to the overnight parking ban, but there are still people who feel that they ought to have some recourse. They don't have off-street parking and they're too far, they live too far from a municipal lot to use them in any practical sense. And they want they want a solution. And I'm sympathetic to them wanting a solution, even though when they bought their residence, they must have known that there was no off-street parking possible. But that's sort of one question. The parking ban stays the same, and we have now, and we would continue to have this challenge. And the second, the parking ban gets lifted. And then we have all sorts of questions about what do we do as a city? What does traffic council do? What does the city council need to do? What does this committee need to do? That's a lot more challenging, it feels, a lot of questions one could raise. But since this item is on the ballot, there's obviously a reasonable chance that it'll get passed. I wouldn't want to just have to start thinking about that problem, November, 8th or whatever day election day is this year. The day after, we should do what we can to set up the questions and collect the information and develop the strategies that would make us feel like we're in a reasonable position to follow through if this parking ban, the winter parking ban, is lifted. I agree, Councilor Grossman, with your comment that we don't have a lot of resources at our command to do this. And I think especially if the parking ban gets lifted, there could be a lot of questions, a lot of research that somebody would need to undertake. But at least we could set up the questions and have some ideas about how the questions would be answered. And maybe we'll get some people in, whether it's in the police department or in the planning department or somewhere, to spend a little time on this. And I think both of those are worth grappling with.
Counselor Bixby.
Thanks, Chair. And Councilor Black, I think you just raised a bunch of great points. And I think that the sort of thinking about it in those two parts is helpful in terms of, whatever next steps we're looking for. To me, I think, already we've raised a bunch of sort of knowledge about how parking already works in Newton. I think all the discussion we've done about these neighborhood parking districts and other things, is helpful for more people to have a deeper understanding of. And I think one piece would be to continue some of that work through this as well. And then, I'm not sure if committees have ever kind of put together some sort of broader report. I mean, we know we have our committee reports, but if there would be some way to share some consolidated and information that we have gathered and would continue to gather with the broader public in some way, but that would be one idea, or keeping it at the level of sort of questions, or just even directing folks to resources, like Councilor Black said on the questions line. The other thing, and I've been thinking about is just talking with some other departments or, other parts of departments about some of the pieces that affect parking. So perhaps talking with folks at DPW about how on-street parking interacts with street cleaning and trash pickup. And, there might be other kind of questions along those lines that, either way things go in November, we would want to have more information and have the public have an understanding of that information as well. So those are a few thoughts from my end.
Counselor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. So I have been emailing with the law department, and if this overnight parking ban is lifted, we can, as a city, limited to certain areas. For instance, in VCLD, we require no parking whatsoever. And in the village centers, we have much lower parking amounts and higher density and things like that. So I'd like to see something like, half a mile within the village centers, keeping the overnight parking ban. And then there's other specific areas like near BC, where we may want to do it. And according to the law department, we can do that. Thank you.
Interesting. Counselor Downs.
I was going to make a similar point to Councilor Wright that we were told shortly after we investigated the overnight parking ban ballot item that the next day council could reinstate the overnight parking ban. Not politically perhaps the most astute thing to do, but totally legal. So putting it in some areas after the ban is lifted would be legal. And I think until the ballot question, there's not a whole lot I feel like we can do. Because anything we do now that says overnight parking ban would be affected by the resolution. So I think we want to hold off just to be safe. At least that's what Jonah Temple seemed to think. Hold off just to be safe and know that these discussions about, where it might be appropriate, first of all, are going to bubble up organically as DPW sees where we're having trouble with streets leaking, as we are in Nonantum, or as they are having trouble with plowing, which they say now they don't have any problem with. But we can always see where that eventually goes. And we can also look at our village centers. I think there's less of a danger in village centers, in part because we don't have a lot of residences in village centers. As that changes, we may want to change that rule, but also in village centers that you can't leave it, you have to start moving it as soon as enforcement starts, which can be as early as 7 or 8 in the morning, which becomes rather inconvenient, and makes that, garage space that you're not paying for because you're parking on the street look that much more attractive. So my inclination with this is to give it an NAN and say we've discussed it to death and we can put it behind us and wait, see what the voters say.
Counselor Block.
I think that we should, at the very least, talk about and try and come up with a system that deals with people who don't have off-street parking and who, as a practical matter, can't use the municipal lots. I think that's a problem today. Every so often, somebody comes to somebody in the city bureaucracy, maybe a city councilor, and says, what do I do? I have a young child, I have somebody with a medical condition, you know, this isn't fair. And I think even though this might get resolved in the one sense in November, if the parking ban is lifted, I think this is a problem we should be trying to solve as soon as possible. And we may not solve it before November, but um, I think I think it's important enough to keep working on it. And especially if the parking ban isn't lifted, then we will have made progress on a problem that will persist after the election. I can definitely see leaving the question about what do we do if it gets lifted? What are our choices? It's very complicated. I feel uncomfortable that somebody wouldn't be working on them, but it may be so, there may be so many options that really some city department, whether it's DPW or planning or police or all of them, have to collaborate to suggest a process that we have if this gets lifted. That's how I'm thinking about this right now. Thanks.
Counselor Lucas.
Thanks. I agree with the points that Councillor Downs, Block, Wright, really everyone has made on this. If the overnight parking ban is lifted, then perhaps we should incorporate some of the ideas that Councillor Wright mentioned in her conversations with the law department. If the overnight parking ban is not overturned in this upcoming election and we maintain the status quo, we should definitely do what Councillor Block mentioned, and that is helping those Newton residents who do not have any off-street parking, in working with them on obtaining an on-street overnight parking permit. And I know, Chair, you and I think are in agreement on this. This is something that I think we should have been doing from the beginning, but we have not had the assistance with the administration on implementing an overnight parking pass in the interim leading up to the ballot referendum. But if the overnight parking ban is lifted in November, there will not be an overnight parking ban in December, January 2026, February, and March. And that gives us from, next January 1st, January 2026, up until December 2026 to come up with a proposal that we can give to the full council to vote on, to try to implement some of the ideas that Councillor Wright had mentioned earlier. So right now, there's really not much to do. We're just thinking out loud and talking out loud. But perhaps we should work behind the scenes on some ideas that we can present to the committee, so that way we can get to work, win, lose, or draw what happens with this upcoming ballot referendum. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Lucas, you alluded to where my brain was at, which is the parking permit question, and the discussion we just had on the last docket item brought that to my mind as well. As did the comments, Mr. Kozis, that you started with in this discussion. So, I mean, I thought in docketing this item initially, in the beginning of the term, that we would get to a substantive discussion about different proposals, a parking permit proposal being one of them. Let's say, like those charts we just had up, let's just say option A was a citywide parking permit program, and maybe there's a bunch of different options, and we're debating the merits of each one. And I'm still interested in doing that. The problem that I'm having is when I think about how other committees run, so think about like land use, for example. Chair Kelly is in, I think, on a weekly basis, and Counselor Lucas, I think maybe you participate in this also with land use, is that right? Meeting with the team and preparing for the meeting and going over what all the different projects are and working together to ensure sort of a smooth process and a smooth evening, and there's lots of information and support. And when I think about the zoning and planning process and the redesign effort, we had constant memos and information and analysis and questions and answers and a back and forth. And when I was chair of finance, I spoke with Miss Lemieux constantly, and we met regularly to go over all the different items and same kind of thing. This committee is really different in that when it comes to fire and police issues or really straightforward, discrete issues like the tiger permits and things like that, then we have kind of a thought partner to go to and sort of come prepared to the meeting with whatever it is we need to discuss. But this topic, we don't have that. And I guess the option then, as I see it, is either we proceed the way that we just proceeded with our past docket items and saying, okay, we don't have, kind of a one specific, thought partner, but we're gonna, ask of colleagues in our other departments, like Mr. Kosis and Captain Devine, who've been kind enough to come and contribute their thoughts and efforts tonight. And we just sort of proceed. And, I don't think we would be implementing anything. We would really just be sort of preparing for the possibility of implementation unless one of these solutions kind of bubbled up to be so compelling that it made sense no matter what. Or we wait and we start dealing with it in, November. Of course, the reality of that situation is we would then have one more month as a council of this term, of this existing council, with a tremendous amount of expected turnover to the next term and a completely new mayor with, if things turned out the way they're looking to turn out currently, likely a very different approach and set of concerns around this topic. I don't love the idea of NAN only because one of my concerns, even if we decided it doesn't make sense to have a bunch more meetings about this, we're heading into the summer, et cetera. Let's just wait. Let's say we decided, let's just wait till November. I don't love the idea of NAN only because if this conversation does bubble up in an increasing way as it comes to November, I would like to retain a vehicle to continue discussing it in this committee if we want to. I don't want to end up in a situation where because we NAN something, we can't then redocket a similar item before the end of the term. But if we want to continue brainstorming ideas and considering different possibilities, then, and what I need to know from all of you is, do you want this on the agenda again? How soon do you want it on the agenda again? And when it's on the agenda again, do you want me to be inviting, others who are not on the committee? Or do you want to be essentially saying, all right, let's put option A on the table. Option A is a citywide parking permit program, of resident and guest passes and, put it up there and start debating it and see where it goes. And then option B is maybe some of these like more targeted areas like Councilor Wright just suggested that sort of line up with the VCOD parameters. Option C is, and we can debate endless things and at least have laid out different brainstormed possibilities leading into November. So those are sort of those are the ways I see to proceed, is either like hold it and do nothing, but leave it on the agenda, leave it on the docket as a possibility if we want it. Or option B is tell me who you want to invite and I'll invite them. And option C is we start putting out ideas and debating them. So can we discuss that for a second? And then maybe we can take a straw poll on those options. And if there's an option D, let me know. That's just how my mind is currently organizing where we're at. Councilor Bixby.
Well, like I said earlier, I think I would have a few other discussions that I'd be interested in having and information to surface. And I'm not quite sure where sort of, I think both Mr. Kozis and Councilor Blacks both had somewhat similar sort of ideas of kind of questions or guidelines, to think about, might fall in your list of alphabetical options. But if that's something people might feel more comfortable with us just discussing, either questions we have leading into any changes, and or, ways we might want to think about responding to any changes. So it's less of a full outline of a plan, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'm sorry for the background noise. I think the baby's having a moment. So to my mind, what I just heard from you, Councilor Bixby, would be a preference for what I think I just called option B, which is continue to put it on the agenda and continue to invite in some different colleagues from the administrative side of the city to discuss different topics.
Sure. I mean, I don't think there needs to be too many more. I mean, I raised one, there might be a few others. And then, perhaps it would be a discussion with traffic council or something, that might be one of those, just to talk about with them. I mean, Mr. Kozis, I know you represent them, you have both hats on, but, or, something about how they might want to think about things. And, if there are future changes, which might encompass what Councilor Wright was also saying.
Although we
well,
do
I
have
guess.
members of traffic council here,
Yeah.
but I see your point for sure. Okay. Councilor Block, then Lucas.
I take your point, Councilor Grossman, about not having a thought partner. That's an elegant way of thinking about the situation. I think we need one. If we're going to have serious discussions about the what if the parking ban is lifted, we definitely need somebody who's going to think through the options and the variations and present them to us and help us see the pros and cons. And without that help, I worry that we won't be using our time or whoever we invite very efficiently. I mean, maybe I'm wrong and maybe we'll get lucky, but I think it'd be pretty complicated. I think the question about if the parking ban remains, what do we do with people who don't have off-street parking? It's true they're okay now until what, I guess December 15th, when it kicks in again. I think we can talk about and develop an option that would deal with that. I'm sort of guessing, but I think we will end up with a proposal that a majority of the committee will be able to support, and that I think we should do
Through this docket item.
through this docket item. Yes.
Okay, talk about how could we, what options are there for folks who do not have off-street parking?
Right.
Okay. Councilor Lucas.
Thank you. I am hesitant to request or ask someone from the administration to come in and discuss this docket item with us. I think last term that occurred either in committee or a committee of the whole or the full council. I don't remember. I'm sorry. And it was pretty clear and obvious that they did not want to be partners in some sort of overnight parking pass with the ban in place. And also why I would be opposed bringing in members of the administration is mainly due to the fact that we're going to have a new administration on January 1st. And that new administration could have a completely different approach to the current one. And ultimately, I think it will be up to the new administration to implement any changes or programs for any potential overnight parking plan, regardless if the ban is lifted or not. So that's my thoughts on that part of it. Whether or not to keep it open, whether to hold this item or to NAN, my instinct is always to hold the item. Some new information could arrive between now and December 31st of this year, and we should be able to discuss it if anything new comes in. If we NAN it, I'm not sure what the rules are on redocketing a similar item in the same term, so I'll need some help on that. But what's the harm in keeping it open? If we have to NAN it in September, just put it on the agenda and just put a chair's note. You want to entertain a motion to NAN. And the last thing I want to say to you, Chair, is I think you said at the beginning of this meeting that it wasn't going to take a long time, and here we are at 2 hours later. So looks like I got you on that one. So
I got that wrong.
yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I don't mind talking about parking. The Celtics game is on, but that's okay. But that's all I want to say for now. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Trust me, my husband is reminding me that I said that as well. Counselor Downs.
Yeah, as is my husband. I'm inclined to agree with Councilor Block that the thing we should probably try to deal with is the people who do not have off-street parking and are in kind of a tight spot. I don't want to accommodate 5 cars, Councilor Flaherty style, that's in Boston. You know, or some auto dealership, but somebody with absolutely no parking, and we don't want to put you know, more parking in the front setback or have them parking on their lawn. We should try to find some way for some kind of limited winter parking permit program that would work for that. And I'd be happy to work with that. Otherwise, you know, I think we've discussed this to death. And we really can't anticipate issues that'll come up. David Kozis and I are both on Traffic Council. Traffic Council can very quickly, although it's a lot of work for Mr. Kozis, we do very quickly and very often put together parking permit programs, and they work. And we could just, you know, extend the hours on those that are problematic, or we could extend the geography for those that where we're starting to see a problem.
Counselor Greenberg.
Thank you. I'm inclined to go to agree with option B that you presented. I don't think it would do any harm to discuss what would happen if the parking ban is lifted and what our options would be and if it's not lifted. I think it would lay the groundwork for the new administration, that we studied it and offered these options. And I don't believe we have a heavy agenda ahead of us for this committee anyway, correct?
Correct.
So I think we could spend time on this and lay some groundwork for future decisions.
Yeah, and I will sort of note that City Council President Laredo at the beginning of the term is the one who really kind of charged me with, thinking about grappling or trying to grapple with this term kind of in preparation for next term. I think the tension that I'm experiencing has probably come across pretty clearly to you all in that, as Councillor Lucas and others have identified, we're going to have a change in, leadership, and this topic is one of, not only a lot of sort of logistics, but a lot of emotion too. And I don't know, it's put all of us, I think, in a little bit of a tricky place. So Councilor Wright, let me hear from you. And then it sounds to me like we need a motion to hold. And then I think I have some direction of where to go from here. Councilor Wright, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Councilor Lucas. We should not end this. And if we want to do another meeting in the fall on it with some more details, that's fine with me.
Okay, thank you. So what I think I'm going to suggest, if everyone is okay with it, is let's take a motion to hold. And let's do two things the next time we take this up. One, invite in individuals from the administration to answer specific questions. And Councillor Bixby, I know, had raised one offline, one question, and I think somebody from DPW potentially to come in and talk about it. And to try to talk about what might we be able to do for folks who do not have off-street parking, like Councillor Block suggested, and then take it from there. That said, the one thing I have to think about a little bit more is when to do it, because as Councillor Greenberg said, obviously we have a lot going on with the budget process, but in terms of this committee specifically, we have a pretty light lift coming up. And, what I don't want to do is put lots of meetings on, without anything to talk about, but I also don't want to cancel lots of meetings and just not try. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm happy to keep putting it on. I would really love your guys' help in guiding, how to really make the time that we spend on it productive and engaging and worthwhile. So why don't we leave it at that for tonight? Can I have a motion to hold? Moved by Councillor Downs? Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Any discussion on the motion to hold? Councillor Wright, I think that's a residual hand, but if you want to speak, it's still up.
No, residual.
All right. In that case, all those in favor of hold, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, this did go a lot longer than I thought tonight, and it was really interesting, so I really appreciate it. I think we made some great progress. I really want to thank Mr. Kozis and Captain Divine for hanging in there and for coming tonight, and taking up these issues again. I really appreciate it, and to be continued. So thank you. See you all soon. Go Celtics.